Clara, so why don't you paint a little picture of what your small Polish town was like when you were growing up?
Well, it was a typical shtetl, but I went to Hebrew school in the afternoon. In the morning, I went to public school. Religion, you didn't practice, you lived the religion. So when I went to Hebrew school, it meant because my father was a Zionist and he wanted me to learn Hebrew. We learned the Tanakh as our history. But I was a nice Polish girl. And then when the Hitler came and all my Polish friends turned away from me, it hurt. But that was before they started killing me. I know there are not too many young people, but I tell you ladies, my mother, who just had 7th grades, when we came to the bunker, she says, "You are writing a diary." Now I had braids below my knees, I had to cut them. I'm hungry, I am thirsty, it's dripping from the wall. I'm afraid of mice, and she tells me to write a diary. So I says, "Ma, they will kill us anyway," because we didn't believe for a minute that we will survive. So she says, "They will find it and know what happened to you." And Mr. Beck, who saved my life, he was all for it. You didn't have pens like we have today. So I asked him for a pencil, and he brought me a blue pencil. And you have to think that it's the hand of God. Because 60 years later, when I took out the diary, I could read it like I wrote today. As a matter of fact, I'm very grateful that the American edition has that original diary on the cover, so you can see it. I'm grateful to Stephen, I'm grateful to Didi that they brought it to light, because I dedicated my life to make sure that the Holocaust will not be forgotten. When I come here at home, I am taking 4 busloads of teachers to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And then we offer them the course free of charge. We pay for the credits, but then they reach thousands of children. So as long as I can, and I can talk, I will be going to classes and speak to children. And you tell your children and your children's children, so the Holocaust wouldn't be forgotten. Now, apparently I can't read the whole book, but there is a small chapter.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We still have plenty of time, don't worry.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the things that Didi and Clara and I did is we took a trip to Zholkiev, her town. And, one of the things that really interests me now is that as Jews and as human beings and whose families come from Eastern Europe is that most of us don't have a clue what our life was like back there. So when we went, it was with really, really great expectation. And when you come into this town, you see this beautiful, beautiful castle, and with these walls that are still there. And it really was a paradise. And one of the things that Clara always told me at least once a day was that, I grew up in the best of all possible worlds. And I really didn't understand what that meant until I got to Zholkiev with Clara. And walking up and down the streets, she would say, well, this is where, my best friend lived, and this is where Mr. Taffet lived, and he always saved books for me, and this is where we went to school, and this was our synagogue. And you got the sense that, oh my God, there was a thriving community there of people who were vibrant and who had families and who loved each other. And more I began to understand that the only way to view the Holocaust is through people like Clara. And if it wasn't for the Beck family, the family that saved them, this story would have really been lost. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Mr. Beck?
Well, it was a family of 3, Mr. and Mrs. Beck and the daughter Alexandra. When we went to the bunker, it was the famous Battle of Stalingrad. And everybody said the war will be over in 6 weeks. Believe you me, we knew, Beck knew, that is going to be almost 2 years, we wouldn't even attempt to live in that crawl space. But human species is very, very strong. Because if an animal doesn't survive, if they don't have the proper surroundings, we survived in the bunker. We survived in the bunker when the soldiers were living upstairs. It was a small shtetl. Everybody said Beck has Jews. We had 4 formal searches. God was watching for us. At one point, there was a trapdoor that led to the bunker. The German lied down, and he said that he saw a Jew disappearing under the bed. He lied down, and with his upper torso, he covered the entrance to the bunker. You speak of miracle. We survived thanks to a miracle. The Becks are dead, but their name is the Holocaust Museum here, and there is a tree in the museum in Israel, which his daughter planted. We brought her to Israel with her granddaughter, and we had a big ceremony because the Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Israel, on a hill in Jerusalem, is surrounded by a forest. Every tree there is planted either by a survivor or a rescuer, and there is a name in the country. And thank God we lived to see that the daughter, who was 18 at the time, planted that tree. Because when we ran away from the pogroms after the war from Poland, we couldn't even write to the Becks because they would be arrested. That was communist Poland. Only today, they are openly, and they are very grateful if they can show that they did help. Of course, my sister would be alive if it wouldn't be for a Polak. He betrayed her for a kilo of candy. So you had rescuers, and you had people who all they had to do is look away when they saw you. But they didn't, and that's how my sister died.
One of the things about the Beck family was he was married to Julia Beck, who was a housekeeper for Clara's family and the 2 other Jewish families that they hid. And Mr. Beck had a reputation. He was a womanizer. He drank a little bit too much. He was a vocal anti-Semite, but then again, he hated the Ukrainians, he hated the Germans, he hated the Poles. He pretty much was, an equal opportunity misanthrope. But he was really, really a stubborn guy, and he just didn't like the idea of Jews being killed. And he decided to save this group of Jews because Julia was the housekeeper. And Julia and Clara's mother were very, very close, and Julia was close with also some of the other women. Julia's mother was actually a milk mammy. And that these Jewish women and this Polish woman nursed at Julia's mother's breast. So you begin to understand how close these families were, and that for some Poles, that the idea of actually killing a Jew was killing a member of their family. And one other thing before I let Clara go on again, is that the bunker is there today. It's still cut out in the floor of this Ukrainian house, and anybody can go there, drive up, knock on the door, and go into the bedroom. He'll move the bed, just like they did years and years ago, take up the rug, and open this bunker. And when people think of the word bunker, they see these World War II movies with these, pieces of wood, these beams and lights. This was basically a hole in the ground, about 4 feet high, that Clara and her other children, friends, and cousins dug out by hand with spoons and pots and pans.
The only way you could stretch out is when you were lying down. When you were standing up, you couldn't stretch out because we couldn't dig that deep without damaging the house. So when you lie down, that is when you stretched out. And I will tell you, a few days after the liberation, I left something in the bunker, knitting needles. And I went to this house, and I slid down to the bunker, and the stench. I came home, And I said to my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle were in Russia. They were taken to Russia by force, which was at that time tragedy, but it was miracle for them because they survived.